Alright, so if you look at the handout, Elements and Principles of Design, I'm going to see if this helps my sound, so I'll stay over here. So Elements of Art, we're going to title that at the top. Alright, I say art and design. On your handout it just says art, but these are universal. So design and art are kind of similar. So if you think about advertising, you want good layout, right? So a lot of the elements, and we're going to get to the principles next week, but the elements and principles have a lot to do with composition and layout. So on the left side of your paper, just leave some space between, but then write out the 7, or I guess on your sheet it's 6. Color and value. So we're going to put 7, one more, value, but we're going to let it connect to color. And then texture, we can put texture at the bottom. Okay. So when you guys were little, like not babies, but like 2 years old, 3 years old, and you first got your some sort of marker or something, what did you guys do with that when you were so little?
Exactly what I was doing.
You probably scribbled, right? So scribbling is lines, basically. And so if I read the definition out of the handout, line is a mark with greater length than width. Lines can be horizontal, vertical, or diagonal, straight or curved, thick or thin. So we can look at, we don't have to write all that down, but what I really want you to focus on is lines have to do with mark making. You can write that down, mark making. And I know we know horizontal, I hope, and vertical. So horizontal goes this direction, vertical goes this way. So if you wanted to label that real quick. But then we have all these other kinds of lines. So lines can also be thick or thin. So we can make a thick line, like more bold line, or a thin line. And if you look at the example sheet with the little lines on there, the little doodles, you guys have some space in here. So if you guys want to kind of like separate this out a little bit, you can fill up this area with lines. So you can think like repetition. So if you make little lines and you repeat them, you end up with patterns. Sorry, 2 T's in there. Trying to write little pattern. And then if you repeat again and just keep it going, like a zigzag line, then you could say you have rhythm. So just draw little examples. If you had really like, I don't know, something bumpy, curvy, that could show movement. I know it's kind of messy, but that's okay. Yours might look neater than mine. All right, and then we have shape. Shape is a closed line, basically. So it's taking line and it's looping it, it's closing it. But I would like for you to think of shape as being flat. So closing that line or connecting a line. And shapes are flat. I'm going to have to write sideways here. Flat. So we know what shapes are. We have geometric shapes. And we have organic shapes. Geometric shapes can be mathematically defined. So I'm going to write that down. Just let me pull up the picture I took earlier of my whiteboard. Oh my gosh, my phone. Okay, so geometric shapes can be mathematically labeled. So we could draw, like if we know what this is, you guys can tell me what that is. You can tell me what that is, right? You can tell me what this is. I hope anyway. This would be like a parallelogram. So those are geometric shapes that are mathematically labeled. And organic shapes are a little bit more, they're free. They're not as labelable, but they can be. So you can just draw some blobs. And these can't be labeled. But things like this can be. So this would still be considered organic. And that's still a shape. So that would still be considered organic. But these now can be defined as symbols. So sometimes organic shapes are symbols, okay? What about things like this? Is this a shape? Would it be a geometric shape or an organic shape? Are they shapes? Okay, well, they're shapes because the line connects, right? Okay, and it encloses space. It encloses some area. So that's debatable. So just like some things in art, the A, if I would have made it with a point, we could have said, you know what, the A is really close to a triangle, right? And if we did an O, then that definitely like has a shape relationship. It's like a oval, right? So some can be, and some can, so in our some things can't fit into a pigeon or like a peg hole. Like it's debatable. So, but letters, block letters, are definitely shaped oriented. Now, if it's just a single line, like all the other writing that we have here, those aren't shapes. They may be creating a closing where a shape shows up, but the L is a line, the C is a line. So when you guys were little, beyond scribbling, starting to control that line, right? You started to do what with that line? Who told you? Preschool told you to start controlling that line and start making letters, okay? And so preschool teachers might have had to use lines and shapes. So in order to create or teach a capital B, they might have said make a line and make 2 circles or something, you know, just to start to get that concept. All right, on to form. There's 2 classifications of form. There's real, like reality, and then there's implied. Okay, so real form is a 3D object that takes up, what do you guys think? Takes up what? Good. Space is right. I heard it. Mass, or space and mass, or mass and space. I'll just squeeze that below. Sorry. And then implied form is an illusion. On a 2D surface. So if we look up here at our shapes up here, and we draw another square down here, how can we make that look like a form? What do? We can take, yeah, I think you know, right? You can do 3 diagonal lines out in one direction. They can go either right or left or up or down, whichever. But just make sure they all go in the same direction. And then add another vertical and another horizontal. Or you could mimic that box again in front or behind and then connect all your corners. And then you get a see-through cube. What about the triangle? If we add another diagonal line out and one here, then we get kind of a pyramid or a tent looking thing. I guess it would be a pyramid, not a tent. Or a pup tent, maybe a little baby one. And then if we do a circle from above, how do we make a circle look like a sphere though? What'd you say? Shading, yes. It has to be pretty much, you're pretty much at the mercy at that point of shading to create that sense of roundness. Alright, so if I were going to add a little shading out, like it's casting a shadow, I could actually shade the front part of my pyramid, add a little shadow out here, shade that front part of my cube, add a little shadow. I could shade slightly that other side, just a little bit, because I don't want it to be too dark, but one dark, medium, light, and then I start to see like these things, actually this one kind of looks like it popped up, take up more, have that illusion of taking enough space. What about a triangle with a curved bottom? Almost like a cone. Okay, so adding helps to create an illusion of depth. All right, depth, we're going to talk about that here in a minute also. So depth is kind of important. Depth could be considered like an element, but it gets incorporated into form and space. All right, to space. All right, so space, there's 2 two types of space also in art. So if I read the handout, it's the area between and around objects. The space around objects is often called negative space. Negative space has shape. Shape can also refer to the feeling of depth. Real space is three-dimensional in visual art. When we create the feeling or an illusion of depth, we call it space. Photographers pay a lot of attention to space. So we're going to do an illustration first. So if you wanted to draw a rectangle, your little drawing, I'm going to put a line about 2/3 of the way up, and then I'm going to put a dot kind of off to the right-ish side of my line, and then I'm going to draw some diagonal lines out. So it's going to be like a road, and then we can put in kind of some triangular kind of squiggles out there, and we could act like we're like in Colorado or something, right? So then we could draw a little blob out here and make it like a little house out there or something in the country. All right, so space in this instance is creating an illusion again of, we're back to that word depth, on a 2D surface. Pretty much we wrote that same thing up here. So form and space have a lot to do with each other. So like if I were going to put a house, you know, I want to make sure that it looks three-dimensional. Then we have positive and negative space. So we can make another, I'm just going to offset it a little bit, but I'm going to make a little design with like squares. Nothing representational, just a little shape design thing. I don't know, I'll just pop some around here. Maybe I'll add one here. Okay, so everywhere I don't have like my shape, I'm going to color that in. So you guys can do a little design. If you don't want to use squares, you can use triangles or circles. Alright, so, oh, did I miss this over here? I think that's supposed to be black. Alright, so now, would you guys say that my balance, do I have a good balance between black space and white space? Okay, so that's what positive and negative is, that kind of idea of balance. So even if it is, let's see. Okay, so what we can write though is positive equals your object, your subject, and negative equals your empty space, what we normally would ignore. Or we also say background. But we can't really, oops, I'm going to run out of space right there. Okay. But we can't really ignore the background, because the background should be just as important, even in something that's more realistically drawn. Even if it's more realistically drawn, right? Realism versus abstract. But it's still, we need to pay attention to that balance. So, the most iconic sense of balance on this that I can come up with from the Western world is the what? The yin-yang. So we'd have one side black and one side white. So you should have, in positive and negative, they should be balanced. Alright, color and value. So for color, let's just start with the basics. So R stands for what? And Y stands for? And B stands for? And these are your primary colors. And we're talking paint here, not computers. And then O stands for orange, V stands for violet, and G stands for green, and this is your secondary colors. And then we have white, brown, gray, and we'll include black. And these are your neutral colors. And then we have value. So value is the lightness, or light, right? Oops, not of, or, sorry. Of color. I'm just going to squeeze that right down there. Of color. Alright, so then if we had a scale, like almost like a number scale with arrows on the end of the line, and we had red in the middle of it, and we get lighter this direction and darker this direction, what would the color be out here? Red mixed with white. Pink, and this would be a dulled out red, dull red. In your book, you guys can, if you're using a pen, you can still do this, but you can color pretty heavy and then lighten up your pressure. And this is value with pencil. Okay, we just dissolved out into the white. And this is called a value scale. Alright, we're almost done. I think we can hit texture. Don't give up yet. Real and implied, just like we had up here with form. Oh, am I off the page here? There we go. So real is physical. You can touch and feel. So like a bunny, soft cat, a glass, you can feel the glass is smooth. You can actually physically feel it. You can feel the rough wall of the brick. Implied is like what's on your little drawing examples. Implied is actually drawing the illusion, again back to that word illusion, on a 2D surface again. Using what? We can go right back up to the top, using mark making. And I'm at the very bottom of my paper. Mark making. So if you guys look at that handout I gave you, which one of these textures definitely relied heavily on a repetition of mark making? Was it the glass? Or was it rough? Or bumpy or jagged? Bumpy and jagged definitely have that repetition of mark making, correct? Alright, well, that is